At the Coffeyville Library. And these are my friends, Clifford, the big red dog, and Emily Elizabeth, who owns Clifford. Today, we're going to read some fun stories for World Read Aloud Day, which is February the 1st. And the story that we're going to read is Clifford's Good Deeds by Norman Bridwell, and it's published by Scholastic Books. Hello, I'm Emily Elizabeth, and this is Clifford, my dog. A boy named Tim lives across the street. One day Tim said, "I try to do a good deed every day. If I had Clifford, I could help a lot of people." I said, "Let's do some good deeds together." A man was raking leaves, and we wanted to help him get the leaves into his truck. But Emily Elizabeth did not know that the dry leaves made Clifford sneeze. Look, achoo, and the leaves go everywhere. The man said he didn't need help anymore, and we went down the street. You see what a mess it was with the leaves were all over the place. We saw a lady painting her fence. We helped her paint, and when we finished, she thanked us. But Clifford got so excited, he wagged his tail, and that was a mistake. He knocked the paint over, and it got all over her house. We said we would paint her house too, but the lady said, "Never mind." Then we saw an old lady trying to get her kitten down from a tree. Tim said, "Clifford, get that kitty." Clifford bent the limb down so that the lady could reach her kitten, but his paw slipped, and the kitten goes flying through the air. Clifford moves pretty fast for a big dog. You see, he caught the kitten before it hit the ground. The lady was glad to get her kitten back. It didn't take us long to find our next good deed. Somebody had let the air out of the tires of a car. The man asked if we could help him. Tim took a rubber tube out of the car and stuck it on the tire valve. Then he told Clifford to blow through the tube. But Clifford blew, and he blew a little too hard. He blew up the tire. The man felt better when we took his car to the garage. You see that Clifford carries the car in his mouth. We saw a small paper boy, and he was so small that he couldn't throw the newspapers to the doorstep. Clifford gave him a paw. But Clifford was a little too strong. When he threw the paper, it went all the way through the house and back out the back window. Nothing seemed to go right for us. All of our good deeds were turning out wrong. Then we saw a terrible thing. A man was hurt and lying in the street. Nobody was helping him. Tim said, "You should never move an injured person." But Clifford didn't hear him. He picked the man up, and we started off to find a doctor. Oh dear! The man was working in a manhole, and when they picked him up, it started pulling the line out of the manhole and created a big problem. We helped the men get their cable back down the manhole, and Tim said, "Clifford, maybe you shouldn't help me anymore." The house on the corner was on fire. Tim ran to the alarm box to call the fire department. Clifford ran to the burning house. There were 2 kids upstairs. With Clifford's help, we got them out safely. Do you see? Emily Elizabeth and Tim getting the children out of the house and walking down Clifford's back. And then, luckily, there was a pool in the yard. So Clifford takes a big drink of water and blows the water on the fire, spews it out. Clifford put the fire out just as the firemen arrived. The firemen finished the job and thanked us for our help. That afternoon, the mayor gave each one of us a medal for our good deeds. Of course, Clifford got the biggest medal of all. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story, Clifford's Good Deeds. Miss Patty at the Coffeyville Library, and we're going to share a fun story called Groundhog Stays Up Late. February 2nd is Groundhog Day, and legend has it if the groundhog comes out of its burrow and sees its shadow, there will be 6 more weeks of winter, but if he doesn't see a shadow, then we'll have an early spring. So let's read this book and find out what happens. Groundhog Stays Up Late by Margaret Cuyler with illustration by Jean Cassels, and it's published by Walker and Company. Groundhog Stays Up Late. Groundhog was the kind of groundhog who did not like to hibernate. To him, making a winter burrow was boring. Gathering and storing food was boring. And most of all, sleeping all winter long was boring. Instead of preparing for winter, he liked to play hide and seek with the rabbits, possum with the opossums, and tag with the bumblebees. So he didn't prepare for winter, he played. "Why do you even bother to hibernate?" chattered Squirrel. "You're never ready when winter comes. You should be looking for nuts and seeds right now." "I don't think I'll hibernate this year," said Groundhog. "But you have to," said Badger. "How else will you wake up on February 2nd and look at your shadow so we'll know if spring is coming?" "I don't need to hibernate to do that," said Groundhog. Bear shook his shaggy head. "Well, don't expect us to give you shelter when it snows." "Or food when you get hungry," said Squirrel. "Or warmth when you get cold," said Badger. Finally, winter came. Groundhog's friends curled up in their homes for their long winter naps, but not Groundhog. He stayed outside. Soon it began to snow. "Wow, snow!" yelled Groundhog. "Time to play." Hare ran by. "Want to make a snowman?" asked Groundhog. "No, silly," said the hare. "I'm racing to my woodpile until the storm is over." Ran by. "Want to have a snowball fight?" said Groundhog. "Forget it," said Weasel. "I'm scampering to my hole where it's warm." Fox ran by. "Want to build a snow fort?" asked Groundhog. "Not now," said Fox. "I'm running to my den to get dry." "What a bunch of stick in the mud," said Groundhog. As the weeks passed, Groundhog built a snowman, threw snowballs at the tree, and made a snow fort. But Groundhog was getting very hungry and very thin, which was making him very cold. And most of all, he was getting very lonely. So one day, just before Christmas, he padded over to Badger's burrow. "May I come in?" he called. Badger opened one eye. "No, I'm too busy sleeping." Bzzz, goes back to sleep. Groundhog scurried to Squirrel's hole. "Hello, Squirrel. How about sharing a few nuts?" Squirrel twitched his tail. "Not now," he said. "I'm taking a nap. Come back in the spring." Groundhog finally burrowed through the snow to Bear's cave. "Wake up, Bear," he said. "It's me, Groundhog." Bear turned over and wiggled one ear. "Go away," he growled. "I warned you not to bother me." Poor Groundhog. So hungry, so cold, and so lonely. All night long he stayed awake, but that night he shivered and shook. He began to get an idea that would put food in his belly and give him friends to play with. A few days later, the sun came out and the snow started to melt. Groundhog climbed to the top of Hollow Hill and pointed his nose to the sky. He opened his mouth and yelled, "Spring's come early! Let's celebrate!" The animals poked their heads out of their dens. They wriggled out of their burrows. They crawled out of their holes. How wonderful to have an early spring! Even though it was cold and there were patches of snow on the ground, spring was on its way. They gathered the food they had stored in the fall and carried it outside. Groundhog was waiting for them. "Happy spring," he lied. "I didn't see my shadow, so spring is coming early. Let's eat." "Hooray!" yelled Bear. "Hooray!" shouted all the other animals. They laid all their food on a big stump. Groundhog dove into the dried berries and nuts and seeds. Soon everyone was eating and celebrating. That is, until something unexpected started to happen. A snowflake fell from the sky. and then another and another. Soon the snow was swirling around them like tiny stars. "I thought spring was coming early," complained the squirrel. "I'm getting very cold and tired all of a sudden," mourned Bear. "I need a nap," said Badger. Squirrel skittered back to his hole and looked at his calendar. It was January the 2nd. "Groundhog played a trick on us," he said. "It's not February 2nd. Groundhog Day is a whole month away." "What a nasty trick," cried the animals. "Groundhog should be punished." But Groundhog didn't hear them. He was sleepy after his big meal, and he had crawled back into his burrow and fallen fast asleep. And he slept and slept right on up until February 2nd, when his eyes popped open on Groundhog Day. He stepped out into the fresh air. The snow had melted, the birds were singing, and buttercups dotted the woods with color. "It's spring!" shouted Groundhog. But when he looked down at the ground, he saw his shadow. See the shadow there? It looked a little strange, and it was a funny color, but it had to be his shadow. "Nuts," he said. "6 more weeks of winter." And he returned to his burrow and went back to sleep. The other animals came out of their hiding places. "Our trick worked," said the badger. "That shadow we painted sure fooled the groundhog." While Groundhog slept through spring, his friends enjoyed the sun warming their fur and the breezes ruffling through the trees. But did Groundhog learn his lesson? So he played a trick on the other animals, and then they played a trick on him. And he thought that it was still winter when it was actually spring. So did Groundhog learn his lesson? No, he did not. I hope you enjoyed this book. Groundhog Stays Up Late.